If saving your crew means disobeying the numbers, then you disobey the numbers. Nobody in the command chamber answered Captain Nathan Brooks. They just stared at the glowing tactical display hanging over the bridge like a final verdict. Across the curved wall of reinforced glass, the fractured heart of the helix rift twisted through space, folding light into impossible shapes while streams of blue-white plasma drifted between shattered asteroids the size of office buildings. Every navigation alarm aboard the USS Resolute had gone silent, not because the danger was over, but because the ship's alien guidance system had already accepted there was nothing left to calculate. A calm synthetic voice filled the bridge. Strategic assessment complete. Probability of mission success, 0%. Probability of vessel survival, 0%. Probability of crew survival, 0%. Nobody argued. Lieutenant Sarah Donovan slowly removed her headset and lowered her eyes toward the deck. Chief Engineer Marcus Hale leaned against the engineering console, rubbing both hands across his tired face. Even the alien liaison, Commander Vare, stood perfectly still, his silver eyes fixed on the impossible maze ahead. His people trusted mathematics more than instinct. If the Oracle AI declared death inevitable, then arguing with it made as much sense as arguing with gravity. Nathan quietly sipped what remained of his cold coffee before setting the paper cup beside the helm. "Run it again," he said. The AI responded immediately. 184,412 simulations completed. Outcome unchanged. Nathan nodded once. Again, 1 million additional simulations completed. Outcome unchanged. The bridge grew quieter. Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, that's enough." Nathan looked toward the stars outside instead of the screen. The helix rift reminded him of a thunderstorm rolling over Kansas when he was 10 years old. His father had parked their old pickup beside an empty field just to watch lightning split the sky. His dad had smiled and said something he never forgot. "Weather doesn't hate you, son. It just doesn't care if you're smart enough to respect it." Nathan smiled at the memory before looking back toward the glowing tactical map. "Never tell me the odds." Commander Vare blinked twice, clearly confused by the sentence. "Captain Brooks, your statement rejects verified probability." "You're right." Nathan shrugged. "It does. That is illogical." Nathan laughed softly. "I've been called worse." The Oracle AI interrupted again. Emotional denial detected. Recommendation: surrender command authority to automated survival protocol. Marcus let out a slow breath. Nobody wanted to look at Nathan anymore. They all knew what automated survival protocol meant. Shut down the engines. Broadcast a distress signal. Wait until oxygen ran out or someone happened to find them first. Safe. Predictable. Hopeless. Nathan stepped toward the center of the bridge, resting one hand against the worn edge of the command chair. He had spent 23 years in space. He had buried friends, written letters to families, sat through investigations where every decision had been replayed frame by frame. He respected numbers because numbers kept people alive. But numbers had never comforted a frightened rookie or convinced exhausted mechanics to keep working through another 16-hour repair shift. Numbers couldn't hear hesitation in someone's voice. They couldn't recognize courage hiding behind fear. "Oracle," Nathan said quietly, "tell me something." Awaiting inquiry. "Did any of your simulations include a crew that refuses to quit simply because a computer told them they should?" There was no answer. For the first time since coming online, the Oracle remained completely silent, and every person on the bridge slowly lifted their eyes toward Captain Nathan Brooks. Silence lingered on the bridge for several long seconds after the Oracle failed to answer. It was the first crack anyone had ever seen in a system that had built its reputation on having an answer for everything. Commander Vare slowly turned toward Nathan, studying the human captain with genuine curiosity instead of quiet pity. "Our records describe your species as emotional decision-makers," he said carefully. "Yet you continue making decisions after every calculation says you cannot succeed. Why?" Nathan rested both hands on the back of the command chair. "Because I have buried enough friends to know that there is a difference between impossible and unlikely." Sarah Donovan looked at him with the same expression she had worn years earlier during another mission, one that nobody on this bridge liked talking about. She finally broke the silence. "Captain, tell him about Anchorage." Nathan sighed, almost smiling. "That was a long time ago. It matters, Sarah replied. Nathan looked out through the forward viewport again as distant streams of charged particles drifted across the darkness like glowing rivers. 12 years ago, I was flying rescue shuttles over Alaska after the biggest winter storm anyone had seen in decades. Every weather model said a small fishing town was already gone. The helicopters stayed home. The rescue coordinators closed the file. Everybody trusted the forecast. Marcus folded his arms. He already knew the story, but he never interrupted when Nathan told it. I borrowed an old cargo helicopter anyway, Nathan continued. The fuel gauges barely worked. The radar kept freezing. Halfway there I almost turned around because every mile looked worse than the last. Then I noticed something strange. The clouds were moving exactly like the forecast predicted, except one narrow valley. Commander Vare tilted his head. The models were incorrect? No, Nathan answered. They were incomplete. They had satellite data. I had my own eyes. Sarah smiled quietly. He found 38 people waiting in an elementary school gym. Nathan shrugged. Cold, hungry, scared, but alive. Marcus chuckled. The government spent 3 months asking him why he ignored protocol. They sure did. Nathan laughed softly. My supervisor kept saying, the numbers told you not to go. Commander Vare looked genuinely confused. Were you punished? For a while. Nathan nodded. Then the families of those 38 people showed up at the hearing. Sarah looked toward the alien officer. That was the day I decided I would follow this man anywhere. The oracle suddenly came back online. Historical event verified. Probability analysis indicates Captain Brooks succeeded through statistical anomaly. Nathan smiled without looking at the nearest speaker. There it is again. Clarify statement. You keep calling people anomalies whenever they surprise you. The oracle paused for nearly 3 seconds before responding. Correction. Human behavior continues exceeding predictive confidence intervals. Marcus laughed. That is the closest thing I have ever heard to a compliment from a machine. Nathan glanced around the bridge, meeting every pair of anxious eyes one by one. Nobody looked fearless. Sarah still worried. Marcus still looked exhausted. Even Nathan felt the familiar knot sitting in his stomach. Fear was normal. Pretending otherwise had gotten better captains than him into trouble. Listen to me, he said calmly. I am not asking anybody to ignore reality. I am asking you to remember something the Oracle cannot measure. Every person on this ship has spent years solving problems nobody else wanted. We are mechanics, navigators, pilots, medics, engineers, and stubborn professionals who have never quit just because life got difficult. That matters. Maybe not to a computer, but it matters to me. One by one, shoulders straightened across the bridge. Nobody cheered. Nobody clapped. They simply returned to their stations, carrying themselves a little differently than they had only moments before. For the first time since entering the Helix Rift, the Resolute no longer felt like a ship waiting to die. It felt like a crew preparing to work. Commander Vare remained at the tactical station long after everyone else returned to work. His slender blue fingers moved across the floating display while streams of data flowed through the Oracle's quantum core. Every few seconds another simulation completed, and every single one ended exactly the same way. The ship became trapped inside the Helix Rift until its remaining power reserves were exhausted. The Oracle finally spoke again. Current prediction remains unchanged. 0 successful escape trajectories identified. Nathan walked over without rushing. Show me the failures. Vare looked surprised. Captain, the outcome is the important part. Nathan shook his head. No, the mistakes are the important part. The display shifted. Hundreds of flight paths appeared across the holographic map, each ending with a flashing red marker. Sarah stepped closer, studying the maze of failed routes. That is, a lot of bad ideas. Marcus let out a quiet whistle. Looks like somebody dumped a bowl of spaghetti across the galaxy. Nathan smiled. Good. Now we are getting somewhere. Vare frowned. I do not understand. These routes all end in failure. Exactly, Nathan replied. And they all fail for different reasons. He pointed toward one path. This one runs out of fuel. Then another. This one gets caught in the gravity shear. Another. Navigation drift. Another. Engine overload. Sarah's eyes slowly widened. You are not looking for the right answer. Nathan nodded. I am looking for the assumptions. The Oracle immediately responded. Clarification requested. Nathan crossed his arms. Every simulation begins with the same rules. Correct. Affirmative. Then tell me who wrote the rules. The bridge became quiet again. After nearly 5 seconds, the oracle answered. The predictive framework was developed by the Collective Institute of Strategic Intelligence using 28 civilizations and 4,000 years of military data. Nathan glanced toward Marcus. Notice anything missing? Marcus grinned almost immediately. Humans. Exactly. Commander Vare slowly looked back toward the tactical display. Human strategic behavior was never included because your species entered the coalition only 36 years ago. Nathan nodded. So your perfect machine is trying to predict us without really knowing us. The oracle processed the statement. Human tactical records are limited. Very limited, Nathan agreed. Sarah leaned over the navigation console. Captain, look at this. She enlarged one section of the map where dozens of simulations abruptly changed direction at the exact same point. The oracle never flies closer than 12 miles to the plasma stream. Nathan studied the glowing current twisting through the rift. Why not? The oracle answered immediately. Risk exceeds acceptable operational threshold. Nathan looked directly at the nearest speaker. Acceptable to whom? There was another pause. Marcus chuckled under his breath. You are making the smartest computer in the galaxy sound like it works for an insurance company. Even Vare laughed quietly before catching himself. Nathan walked toward the forward viewport. The enormous plasma river shimmered across the darkness with a strange rhythm. It was beautiful in a dangerous sort of way, almost like ocean waves rolling toward a rocky shore. His eyes narrowed. Sarah, magnify that section by 300%. The image expanded. Small fluctuations rippled through the current every few seconds. Most people would never notice them. Nathan did. There, he whispered. Sarah stared at the display. Those pulses. They repeat. Nathan nodded. Not perfectly, but close enough. Vare looked unconvinced. Even if there is a pattern, the oracle determined the risk is unacceptable. Nathan smiled. That is the difference between us. Your machine avoids every dangerous road. Humans spend their whole lives figuring out which dangerous road gives us the best chance. The oracle immediately launched another series of simulations using the newly observed plasma rhythm. Across the bridge, everyone watched the processing counter climb higher than ever before. 100,000, 300,000, 700,000. Finally, the result appeared. Probability of survival, 0.03%. Nobody spoke. To everyone except Nathan Brooks, it was still practically impossible. To him, it was the first good news they had received all day. Nobody celebrated the new number. 0.03% was still a polite way of saying almost impossible. The bridge remained quiet as the updated probability hovered in the center of the tactical display. Commander Vare folded his hands behind his back and looked at Nathan with a mixture of respect and concern. Captain, your observation improved the prediction, but the chance of survival remains effectively non-existent. Nathan nodded. I know. Sarah looked between them. Then what are we waiting for? Nathan took a slow breath before answering. Commitment. Every face on the bridge turned toward him. He walked to the center console and placed his hand on the navigation controls. From this point forward, there is no halfway. If we start this run and hesitate in the middle, the ship will not make it through. Everyone has to be completely locked in. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. You are talking about flying straight into the hottest part of that plasma current. I am. The automatic stabilization system will never allow it. Nathan looked at him. Which is why we are turning it off. The room fell silent again. Sarah blinked twice. You mean manual flight? Nathan answered without hesitation. Every correction, every throttle adjustment, every attitude change. Human hands on the controls from beginning to end. Commander Vare stepped forward immediately. Captain Brooks, Coalition regulations prohibit manual navigation inside unstable gravitational phenomena. Those regulations exist because organic pilots cannot process environmental changes as rapidly as predictive intelligence. Nathan smiled politely. Those regulations were written by people who never flew through Kansas thunderstorms in a crop duster. Marcus laughed despite himself. That is the most human thing I have heard all week. The oracle interrupted before anyone else could speak. Recommendation denied. Manual control increases projected fatality rate by 37%. Nathan looked toward the ceiling speakers. Compared to what? Compared to remaining under automated guidance. The same automated guidance that already predicts zero survival. The Oracle paused. Statement confirmed. Nathan spread his hands. Then we have nothing to lose by trying something different. Sarah slowly walked toward the pilot station, resting her fingers on the worn control yoke. She had not flown fully manual since flight school. Most modern vessels relied on intelligent assistance for nearly everything. I never thought I would see one of these used for real again, she whispered. Nathan walked beside her. Neither did I. Marcus looked uneasy now. Captain, if we disconnect the Oracle from Flight Authority and something goes wrong, there is no taking it back. Nathan met his eyes. Something has already gone wrong, Marcus. We are trapped inside a collapsing rift. We are past the point where safe choices exist. Across the bridge, crew members quietly exchanged nervous glances. Nobody looked eager. Nobody pretended this sounded like a good idea. Nathan appreciated that. Confidence built on denial usually ended badly. Real courage sounded exactly like this room, full of worried professionals choosing to keep moving anyway. Commander Vare finally broke the silence. On my world, captains do not ask for trust. They issue orders. Nathan smiled gently. On Earth, trust lasts longer than orders. Vare studied him for another moment before giving a slow nod. Then, you have mine. One by one, the others echoed the same decision. Marcus returned to engineering. Sarah settled into the pilot's seat. Crew members secured equipment throughout the bridge while emergency power shifted toward propulsion. Nathan reached for the authorization panel. A single red switch waited beneath a transparent safety cover. Printed beside it were 4 simple words that nobody expected to use outside training exercises. Manual Command Authority. He lifted the cover, rested his thumb on the switch, and for the first time since entering the Helix Rift, the Oracle spoke with something that almost sounded like uncertainty. Captain Brooks, this action falls outside every recommended survival model. Nathan pressed the switch. A sharp mechanical click echoed across the bridge, followed by a series of warning tones that nobody aboard the Resolute had ever heard outside simulator training. The tactical display changed from blue to amber as one message after another appeared across the main screen. Automated flight control disconnected. Manual command confirmed. Sarah wrapped both hands around the flight controls, taking one slow breath before looking at Nathan. She feels heavier already. Nathan nodded. That is because now you are flying the whole ship instead of telling a computer where you want to go. The Oracle continued speaking, its calm voice now carrying the slightest delay between sentences. Manual override acknowledged. Predictive support remains available. Direct control authority has been relinquished. Nathan looked toward the nearest speaker. Good. Keep watching. Keep learning. Outside the forward viewport, the glowing plasma current rolled through the rift with a strange rhythm, almost alive, bending around invisible waves of distorted gravity. Sarah eased the Resolute forward by a few feet. Every vibration traveled through the control yoke into her hands. I can actually feel it, she whispered. Commander Vare glanced at the sensor display. Feel what? The ship. Sarah smiled without taking her eyes off the stars. The engines are talking. Vare looked confused. Marcus answered from engineering over the communications channel. She is not joking. Every ship has its own personality after enough years in service. You learn what sounds normal and what does not. The Oracle immediately replied. Engineering assessment invalid. Mechanical systems possess no personality. Marcus laughed. That is exactly what a machine would say. Nathan watched the plasma river carefully instead of the instruments. Tiny flashes rippled through the current every few seconds, each one lasting less than a heartbeat. Most sensor systems average the fluctuations into meaningless background noise. Human eyes noticed the rhythm anyway. Sarah, he said quietly, hold this heading another 5 seconds. Holding. Now 3 degrees left. The Resolute responded slowly, almost reluctantly, as its massive frame drifted toward the edge of the glowing current. Every alarm on Vare's console immediately lit up. Captain, radiation exposure is climbing. Nathan remained calm. Expected. Hull stress is increasing. Also expected. Sarah frowned. The controls are getting lighter. Marcus answered before Nathan could. That is the current pulling us. Do not fight it too hard, or you will waste thrust. Nathan smiled. Exactly. Let the river do part of the work. Commander Vare looked back and forth between the sensor readings and the human crew. Nothing they were doing matched coalition flight doctrine. Every lesson he had ever studied emphasized resisting unstable environmental forces. Humans seem to be cooperating with them instead. Your strategy depends on surrendering partial control, he observed. Nathan nodded. Every sailor learns the same lesson sooner or later. You do not beat the ocean by arguing with the tide. Another pulse shimmered across the plasma stream. Nathan pointed immediately. There. Now. Sarah nudged the controls just enough for the Resolute to slip between two expanding waves of charged particles. The ship barely shuddered. Marcus looked down at the engineering readouts in disbelief. Power consumption just dropped 6%. Sarah blinked. We are moving faster. The Oracle processed the new telemetry almost instantly. Unexpected efficiency gain detected. Recalculating survival probability. Everyone looked toward the center display as numbers raced across the screen. The bridge remained completely silent until the calculation stopped. Probability of successful escape, 0.48%. It was still less than 1%, but it was no longer standing still. Nathan folded his arms and smiled toward the glowing stars ahead. That is the thing about impossible, he said softly. Sometimes it starts moving one small decision at a time. Nobody noticed the warning light at first. It was a single amber indicator buried among hundreds of engineering readouts, blinking quietly while everyone watched the expanding plasma river ahead. Marcus saw it only because he had spent 20 years staring at machines until tiny details became impossible to ignore. His smile disappeared. Captain, he said over the communications channel, I have a cooling imbalance in the port fusion manifold. Nathan did not turn around. How bad? Marcus hesitated for just a moment. Not bad yet, but it is getting worse every minute. Sarah kept both hands steady on the controls as another pulse rolled through the rift. Can we keep going? Marcus studied the numbers again. We can. I just cannot promise for how long. Commander Vare looked toward the engineering display. The Oracle predicts the overload will stabilize. Marcus shook his head immediately. No, it will not. Vare frowned. The model indicates internal temperatures will level off. Marcus leaned closer to the monitor before answering. The model thinks the coolant pumps are brand new. They are not. Pump 3 has been making a funny rattling sound for the last 8 months. The Oracle interrupted. Maintenance records classify Pump 3 as operational. Marcus smiled. Operational does not mean healthy. Nathan finally turned toward the engineering camera. Can you fix it? Marcus scratched his chin while mentally walking through every compartment between himself and the failing equipment. Maybe, but I have to crawl inside the service tunnel myself. There is no maintenance drone small enough. Sarah looked away from the windshield for only a second. How long? 10 minutes if everything goes perfectly. Nathan raised one eyebrow. And if it does not? Marcus shrugged. Then I owe you a better answer later. Nathan laughed quietly. Fair enough. Go. Marcus grabbed his tool bag without another word. Before leaving engineering, he stopped beside a young technician named Daniel Ortiz, who had been with the crew for less than a year. Daniel looked nervous enough to forget how to breathe. Marcus rested one hand on his shoulder. You know why I picked you for this assignment? Daniel swallowed. Because everyone else was busy? Marcus grinned. Because you pay attention. Watch the pressure gauges. If either one moves more than 2 degrees, you tell me immediately. Do not wait. Do not guess. Daniel nodded quickly. Yes, Chief. Nathan listened as the channel clicked off. He knew Marcus well enough to recognize what had been left unsaid. Space rarely gave second chances to maintenance mistakes. Up ahead, another wave rolled through the plasma current. Sarah, Nathan said calmly, hold this speed. Holding. Nice and easy. The Resolute drifted deeper into the glowing corridor while distant flashes reflected across the bridge windows. Commander Vare quietly observed the human crew working together. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody blamed Marcus for aging equipment. Nobody argued about who was responsible. They simply adapted. After several long minutes, Daniel's voice suddenly came across the engineering channel. Chief, the pressure gauge just moved. Marcus answered immediately from somewhere inside the narrow service tunnel. How much? Almost 3 degrees. There was a brief silence, followed by the metallic sound of tools shifting against steel. Marcus exhaled. Found it. One coolant valve is sticking halfway open. Nathan glanced toward the engineering display. Can you free it? I think so. Another pause. Then a loud metallic clang echoed through the ship. Marcus laughed. Sometimes the official repair procedure is a carefully calibrated tap with a wrench. Sarah smiled despite the tension. Please tell me you are joking. I wish I was. Seconds later, the pressure readings slowly settled back into their normal range. The warning light disappeared. The Oracle immediately updated its engineering assessment. Mechanical irregularity resolved through undocumented maintenance method. Marcus climbed out of the service tunnel breathing hard, but smiling. Write that down under Human Standard Procedure Number 1. Commander Vare looked genuinely puzzled. What is Procedure Number 1? Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old shop towel. Take care of your ship, and she will usually take care of you. You cannot put that into an algorithm, but every mechanic on Earth understands exactly what it means. The bridge settled into a rhythm that no simulation had ever predicted. Nobody spoke unless they had something useful to say. Sarah kept her eyes moving between the stars ahead and the reflections dancing across the windshield. Marcus monitored the engines with the quiet focus of someone listening to an old friend instead of a machine. Commander Vare no longer questioned every human decision. Instead, he watched, trying to understand what the Oracle could not. Then the tactical display chimed. The Oracle's voice filled the bridge once again. Updated probability of successful escape, 4.7%. Sarah looked up in surprise. That is almost 10 times higher. Nathan smiled faintly. Not because space changed. Commander Vare slowly finished the thought. Because we changed. The Oracle responded immediately. Correction. New environmental data has improved predictive accuracy. Nathan walked toward the display. Show me every variable that changed. Thousands of lines of information scrolled across the screen. Vare examined them carefully before his expression shifted. Captain, the environment barely changed at all. Marcus looked over from engineering. So what did? The Oracle hesitated before answering. Crew behavioral adaptation produced measurable efficiency improvements. Sarah laughed quietly. You mean we stopped acting like people waiting to lose? Statement, partially accurate. Nathan folded his arms. Keep going. The Oracle continued processing. Pilot response times improved by 18%. Engineering resource allocation improved by 22%. Communication delays decreased. Manual navigation corrections exceeded projected precision. Marcus leaned back in his chair with a satisfied grin. It is learning. Vare stared at the scrolling data. No, it is admitting that it did not understand. The bridge became quiet again as another series of calculations began. Unlike before, the Oracle no longer relied entirely on historical coalition doctrine. Every decision made aboard the Resolute was now being added to its active prediction model. The computer was rewriting its own assumptions in real time. Sarah noticed the change first. Captain, look at this. She enlarged the simulation panel. Earlier, every projected flight path had ended with a red warning symbol. Now a handful of routes stretched much farther into the rift before failing. Nathan nodded slowly. It is no longer trying to prove we are doomed. Commander Vare looked genuinely amazed. It is searching for ways we might survive. Nathan smiled. That is a much better question. The Oracle spoke again, but this time its tone seemed different. Not emotional. Simply, less certain than before. Request submitted. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. Explain human decision methodology. Current predictive framework remains incomplete. Marcus laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. Did the smartest computer in the galaxy just ask for help? Sarah grinned. Sounds that way. Nathan looked toward the nearest speaker with the same calm expression he had carried since entering the rift. All right. Lesson number 1. Humans almost never make one big heroic decision. We make hundreds of little ones. We notice strange sounds. We trust experienced mechanics. We share ideas. We admit when we are scared. We keep showing up. The Oracle remained silent for several seconds before answering. Those variables cannot be consistently quantified. Nathan nodded. Exactly. Another notification appeared across the display. Updated probability of successful escape, 11.2%. Nobody cheered. The number itself was not the most surprising part anymore. The surprise was that the Oracle no longer sounded confident in its own limits. Commander Vare quietly looked out at the glowing currents surrounding the Resolute before speaking almost to himself. For my entire life, I believed intelligence meant finding the correct answer. Nathan stood beside him, watching the shifting stars ahead. Sometimes intelligence means realizing you have been asking the wrong question all along. For the first time since they entered the Helix Rift, the Oracle did not offer a correction. It simply recorded the sentence, stored it among millions of calculations, and began building a new model where humanity was no longer treated as an exception, but as a variable that could change the future itself. The first sign that they were close did not come from the sensors. It came from Sarah. She leaned forward in her seat, narrowing her eyes at the shifting light beyond the windshield. "Captain," the rhythm changed. Nathan stepped beside her without looking at the tactical display. "Show me." She pointed toward a faint ribbon of pale blue energy weaving through the larger plasma current. "The pulses are getting farther apart. They are not pushing against us anymore. They are pulling." Commander Vare immediately checked the instruments. "The scanners do not detect a significant change." Nathan smiled. "That is because the scanners are averaging everything together." Marcus joined the conversation over the engineering channel. "I trust Sarah's eyes more than an average." The Oracle processed another wave of incoming data before speaking. "Visual anomaly confirmed after manual review. Sensor filters removed. Hidden gravitational corridor detected." Vare looked up in disbelief. "The corridor was there the entire time?" "Yes," the Oracle answered. "It was previously classified as statistical noise." Nathan quietly nodded. Sometimes the difference between noise and information depends on who is paying attention. Sarah carefully adjusted the controls by less than a single degree. The Resolute eased toward the narrow opening while the glowing plasma streams curved around the ship instead of crashing into it. The movement was so gentle that nobody on board felt it, but every navigation display immediately lit up with new calculations. Marcus looked at the updated power readings and let out a low whistle. "Engine load is dropping again. We are practically gliding." Daniel Ortiz looked up from his station with a grin that was impossible to hide. "I have never seen fuel efficiency numbers like these." Nathan looked around the bridge. "That is because nobody has ever flown this route before." The Oracle interrupted. "Correction. This route existed in previous simulations, but was discarded due to insufficient observational confidence." Commander Vare folded his arms. "You ignored it because you could not prove it was safe." Statement confirmed. Nathan chuckled softly. "That is another human habit you might want to learn. Sometimes you investigate the strange thing before throwing it away." Suddenly a caution tone sounded across the bridge. Sarah's smile faded. "Captain, the corridor is narrowing." Nathan looked outside instead of at the display. The shimmering path ahead had begun twisting more sharply than before. "How much room?" "Less than 40 feet on either side." Marcus answered immediately. "The Resolute is 34 feet wider than that with the maneuvering fins extended." Sarah glanced over her shoulder. "We cannot fit." Nathan did not answer right away. He simply looked toward engineering. Marcus understood before a word was spoken. "You want me to retract the emergency stabilization fins?" "Can you?" Marcus scratched his chin. "Nobody has ever tried it while the engines were under load." Nathan smiled. "Today seems full of first times." Marcus laughed. "I walked right into that one." He turned toward Daniel. "Come with me. We are going to do something that will either make the maintenance manual a lot thicker or get my name permanently removed from it." Daniel swallowed hard before following him without hesitation. Commander Vare watched the two humans disappear from the engineering camera. The younger technician did not hesitate. Nathan looked at him. Because Marcus trusted him first. A few moments later, Marcus's voice returned over the communications channel. "Stabilization fins are retracting manually. Nice and slow." The entire ship gave a gentle vibration as the massive structures folded inward. Sarah watched the clearance markers climb 1 inch at a time. Finally, she smiled. "Captain, we have exactly 3 feet to spare." Nathan rested one hand on the back of her chair. 3 feet is plenty when everyone aboard is working together. The Oracle quietly updated its newest prediction. Probability of successful escape, 34.6%. This time nobody looked at the number first. Every eye remained on the narrow corridor ahead, because they had all begun to understand the same lesson. The future was not changing because luck had finally arrived. It was changing because ordinary people kept finding one more good decision to make before giving up. Sarah eased the Resolute into the narrow corridor with movements so small they were almost invisible. Nobody breathed until the glowing walls of plasma slowly drifted behind them instead of closing around the ship. 1 second passed, then another. Suddenly, the stars ahead stopped bending. The distorted light that had surrounded them for hours faded into ordinary darkness. And for the first time since entering the Helix Rift, the forward viewport showed a clear path across open space. Every alarm on the bridge shut off almost at once. The silence that followed felt louder than any warning siren. Sarah slowly let go of the controls, staring through the windshield as if she expected the rift to pull them back. "Captain," she whispered, "we are out." Marcus looked down at the engineering panel before laughing in complete disbelief. "Engines are stable. Cooling systems are normal. Fuel reserves are still above emergency minimums." Daniel Ortiz leaned back in his chair, covering his face with both hands before letting out a relieved laugh that spread across the bridge. Commander Vare remained frozen, unable to take his eyes off the tactical display. The Oracle spoke only after several long seconds. "Escape confirmed. Final probability outcome inconsistent with original prediction model." Nathan quietly picked up the same cold paper cup that had been sitting beside his chair since the beginning of the crisis. He took one sip, made a face, and smiled. That coffee somehow got even worse. The bridge burst into laughter. It was not loud or dramatic. It was the kind of laughter that only came after people realized they were finally safe. Vare looked at Nathan with an expression that carried more respect than words could manage. "Captain Brooks, my people have trusted certainty for thousands of years. Today I watched uncertainty save us." Nathan shrugged. "Uncertainty is where people get to make a difference." The Oracle interrupted once more, requesting permission to archive today's mission as a primary strategic learning event. Nathan nodded. "Granted. Additional request. Previous human behavioral assumptions require permanent revision." Commander Vare looked toward the nearest speaker. "What revision?" The Oracle answered without hesitation. "Previous model assumed human decision-making prioritized maximum statistical survival. Revised model concludes humans routinely prioritize responsibility, experience, cooperation, and trust, even when such choices temporarily reduce measurable probability." Marcus smiled. "That sounds a lot more like us." Sarah stood from the pilot's seat and stretched her tired shoulders. "You forgot one thing. Specify. Hope." The Oracle remained silent for nearly 5 seconds before responding. "Concept previously classified as emotionally symbolic. Current evidence suggests measurable operational value." Nathan looked out across the quiet stars while rescue signals from Coalition space finally reached the ship. He remembered the faces of every mentor who had ever taught him something useful. His father watching storms across an empty field. The old mechanics who said to listen before fixing. The rescue workers who never walked away because the forecast looked bad. None of them had been famous. None of them had changed the galaxy alone. They had simply passed one good habit to the next person, who passed it to someone else. Maybe that was how humanity had always survived. Not because people were fearless, smarter than every machine, or blessed with impossible luck, but because ordinary men and women kept choosing each other when it mattered most. As the first Coalition ships emerged from hyperspace, the Oracle quietly transmitted one final recommendation to every strategic network under its authority. Future projections involving human crews shall never be considered complete until accounting for adaptive judgment beyond established models. Nathan smiled without reading the message. He already knew something no algorithm could ever fully calculate. The future has never belonged to the ones who are certain. It belongs to the ones who keep moving forward even after certainty tells them to stop.